I always think about staffing as like puzzle, like all the puzzle pieces really need to fit nicely together and complement one another.
If you've got a target market that you work with other agencies to help each other, send each other the referrals for those targets.
Are you marketing in the right places? Are you getting the right result? And what do those results look like? Is it impactful for the agency? Hola, mi amor, Esteban, ¿cómo estás?
Muy bien, ¿y tú?
Oh, see, you thought this was going to be a Spanish blog. Unfortunately, that's about the extent of my knowledge, other than to ask about dogs, shoes, where the club is, and where's the bathroom. So if I ever get lost in a Spanish-speaking country, I will be able to at least go shopping. And that means I probably did not have a very strategic plan. If I end up in a Spanish-speaking country without speaking Spanish.
Without me.
Or a game plan. Without Therese. Yes, I need to take Therese. So today,
well, the only one with the last name on the line.
And then
I don't speak Spanish.
No, I'm not. No, I'm listening.
You can blame my dad for that.
There you go. So what we want to do is make sure that you have a great annual plan for your agency. And today we're going to clarify some of the steps we need to take to make that plan amazing. In one of our prior blogs, you already heard us talk about, do you need one? And the answer is always yes. But like, how do you what are some things to think about? Today, we're going to talk a little bit more about the technical part. And we love how I love to get a little nerdy from time to time and make the information fun. If you can make data cleanup entertaining, you can make anything entertaining, right? So what does a good plan start with? Like, how do we even know what we should be doing with a plan? And I think it really starts with like a summary, an executive summary. Like, think to yourself, why am I creating this to begin with? What is it that I want to accomplish with this? And why is it so important to the agency and to myself that this happens? And really the executive summary is just that high level, it's almost like your overall consolidated plan for the next year, 10 years, whatever you want it to be, right? Like, I am doing this plan because ... We need to grow. We're missing the mark. We have great staff, but horrible processes. Whatever it may be, really define why it's important to you and what you want the outcome to be, because then everything else kind of builds on that.
It's like an agency assessment.
It is just like an agency assessment. Ooh, we might have followed a secret sauce with this formula here.
And if you need help, find us.
Oh, yes, find us online, on the socials. We're everywhere. We're traveling the country. You might see us in an airport. You never know where you're going to find us. We then move into the mission and the vision of the agency. We need to clearly define this. Pull out that old dusty binder on the back desk or from under the pile of all the other files. You might have created this years ago. It's time to dust it off and reevaluate. Does the agency's mission and overall vision still align with where you're at and or where you want to be? And a lot of times working with agencies, I'm sure Bobby's had this experience as well. We go in and they're like, we already got all this. And they pull out like this crusty old booklet or binder or employee guide from 1987. And it's like, we will be the premier insurance carrier in the blah, blah, blah valley by utilizing computer technologies to provide auto rate to all the customers that call or fax. And I'm like, okay, is that relevant? Like, what
dust off my cobwebs here. Hang on.
I'm like, and it was probably typed on the typewriter. And then on the turn the handle Xerox machine, right? And I'm being a little facetious with this, but I think a lot of times we don't review it, and or even if we have it, the team doesn't remember it because the vision, values, and mission are not built in to our daily or weekly interactions with the team. We don't make a big deal about it, but it's really what's going to set the foundation for everything else at the agency. Everything has to go back to the values. At APP, when we're doing any kind of planning, we have to look and say, does this align with our values or are our values outdated, right? And I don't think values become outdated easily. Like, that's a big decision to change values once they're established. But overall, does it align with our values? And sometimes it's a great idea, but it doesn't align, so we have to move it along.
Yeah.
So I think we really have to be careful with defining what the mission, vision, values. It creates the culture for the agency.
Well, and I think, that's a great point, Stephen, because I think values, agencies or companies, but it doesn't even have to be an insurance agency. I think companies create their values because they think we need to have this thing that, is potentially externally customer facing that makes us so great and wonderful, but then we don't hold our team accountable to the values. They don't even know what the values are a lot of times. And those values should be something that they should recite, that they should know, this is how I honor my team when I show up to work each day.
And in agencies, once you have that in place and you're building the culture that you want the agency to be or refining the culture, I think it's really important. That's even part of the interview process, right? Like here's our vision, here's our values, here's our mission. Is there any of these you don't agree with or you don't think you'd be able to honor? Right? Because the right person is not the right fit for everyone. But we have to define it as part of this planning process in order for it to be relevant and to be able to use it.
Yeah. To your point, I think you're very right. Like, I think a lot of times when we're hiring, we find these people and we're like, ooh, warm body.
They have
They
a
can
pull and a
speak,
license.
right? But, did we share all that information? And is there anything that they're not going to be able to support? And it doesn't mean that they're not a great person. They're still a great person. Doesn't mean that you're not a great agency. You are still a great agency. It just means we are not aligned. And it's okay for us to say no.
But if we don't have a definition of our vision and values, it's hard to hold anything accountable to it.
Mhm.
And I think we have to think about the language too. If you're looking for someone who speaks another language, also sometimes they aren't a right fit, but they just grab them and they're like, "Oh, they speak Spanish. We're hiring right now." And you have to think about them. You have to talk through those visions and values and see if they agree with them because regardless of what languages they speak, if they don't do what you need them to do and have the knowledge that you need them to have, they're not a good fit.
I was talking to an agency the other day and I was like, I am a horrible fit for loosey goosey family agency, right? Like, I've been there, I've done it, I succeeded, but the struggle was real almost every day, right? I'm also not going to fit in a super conservative, like highly regulated agency. I have to have a little bit of wiggle room and freedom, right? I'm going to get the job done. I'm going to follow the rules, but I need that little bit of kind of the middle of the road, some structure with some freedom. That's just my personality style. But when we're looking at the agency, we have to really analyze what is it we need for the culture. And that helps by defining.
I always think about staffing as like puzzle, like all the puzzle pieces really need to fit nicely together and complement one another. You're not looking for the same person over and over and over, just like the three of us are very different. But everything that we bring to the table, we have very complementary skills in a lot of ways. We are all very aligned on where we want to go and how we're going to get there. And I think that is the ultimate goal, right? Is you're trying to fit those staff members together like puzzle pieces so that they're complementing one another.
And that leads us to the next thing to look at, which is the SWOT analysis, the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the why did my mind just go blank on the T? Threats. Thank you. I was like thorough. And I'm like, thorough's not the right T. Strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. Right. And we actually individually do these throughout the year as well. Like, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are my opportunities? And what are my threats? And what we look at is how can we each complement each other in some of our weaknesses? And if there's opportunities, how can we all utilize those together, right? Like really aligning the team in a great way. But if we're not analyzing or looking at what is the agencies and each individual's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, we're doing ourselves a disservice because we can't prepare for what may happen. I'm not saying go down the rabbit hole of what if, but as it stands right now, what are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? And we're going to talk a little bit more about how to define some of that as we get further through this process. The next one, which I know Therese loves, so we're going to give her a second to give you a recap of that, is
These SMART goals, you need to make goals and you need to make them SMART, which is specific or clearly defined, measurable, something that can be qualified or measured, facts, not feelings.
Mhm.
They need to be achievable, which is able to be brought about or reached successfully. They need to be relevant or closely connected or appropriate to what is being done or considered. And they need to be time bound. They need to have a target date or a time to achieve or accomplish those goals. So again, SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound.
And I think that that's important to remember as we're setting the goals, like those things. How do we make it clear and achievable? It can't be that 6 months, a year from now, we go back and we look and we're like, oh, we missed that one because we didn't set a timeline. Right? What is the time bound? I think is super important. And it has to be clear. The next one is market analysis. Bobby, do you want to talk about market analysis and competitor analysis?
Yeah, I loved, thinking about a target market, right? Where is your agency? What are we targeting? What are we doing? Is every customer a customer? Do we just say yes to everybody that walks in the door with a sweaty wad of cash?
$1's a dollar, Bobby.
ID card today? That may be your model. Hey, we're not judging.
Right.
Right?
No, we're not. I have worked in just about any kind of agency there is, or worked with just about any kind of agency there is, right? No. We just got to figure out how to make it be the best it can be at whatever it is you choose.
Absolutely. But really identifying and understanding what is our target market. And then we need to understand the needs of that target market. So if you're going to target breweries, right? How are we going to do that? What are we going to do? Are we going to go out? I'm all about targeting some breweries. Like, I think we could.
There's an agency that does, and like they're very successful, but they stay in their wheelhouse, right? They've identified how to get them, they've created the programs, but it all came from strategic planning and setting their vision over several years.
Right. And getting that knowledge for their staff and to the markets and knowing where to go, and then knowing how to say no to the things that don't fit our expertise. I worked in a niche for several years with social service and nonprofit organizations, and it's a niche, but it's also, wide open because I could do anything from foundations to churches. And so there's a lot of information there, but when it fell outside of that, I was not, I'm not writing condo associations and I'm not doing things like that. So making sure our staff is really, really, they know where to go, how to get there, how to quote, what that underwriting looks like, give them all those things and really understand what you're going to do there, and then set some goals for yourself. And then, evaluating who are your agency's competitors? Who else is doing well in your market? Who are your neighboring agencies?
And who else is not doing your market? And you could send people to that do the markets, because condo associations were a nightmare because there was a certain agent that knew how to do them. So we would send him over to him because he knew how to cover them properly, and my agency didn't. So if you've got a target market that you work with other agencies to help each other, send each other the referrals for those targets.
Yeah, I think we work in such a highly competitive business that we forget that we can work in tandem with one another.
We can all be friends. There's enough people for everyone, right? And that kind of leads us into the marketing and sales strategies. Like, where should I be focusing my dollars when it comes to acquiring new customers? Or where should I be putting it out there that I do specialize in this, right? I worked at an agency where we did a lot of higher value homes, but we only did them as packages. We required 3 or more policies. You always had an umbrella quoted. It took us years to get to that place, but somebody with commercial would call and we'd be like, great, please call so-and-so. And we had a person that we would warm transfer or give them the contact information because we knew that agency was good at what they did as well. And they in return would send us any of their higher value homes or their package client. But our marketing strategy wasn't to just blanket everybody and put flyers on cars in a mall parking lot, because that wasn't where our target clients were. Our target clients were normally working, they were business professionals that had a higher value property. The kids were normally older or moved out. It wasn't the 24-year-old that just got married and has a kid that has a car or two living in an apartment. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but we had to really define where we needed to spend our time and money. And I think as part of your annual plan, you need to reevaluate and really look at where are you spending your efforts on? Are you marketing in the right places? Are you getting the right result? And what do those results look like? Is it impactful for the agency? We then take a look at product and service operations, right? Do we have all the products we need? Do we have too many products? What is it we need versus what do we have? And I love working with agencies that are niche, like all day long, niche, right? If you have the drive and passion for whatever that wild niche may be, you go after cog makers, I don't know, like whatever that is. Do you have all the markets you need? And are you honoring that? Or are you still writing a bunch of random stuff just to make money? Right? No right or wrong answer again, but we have to kind of decide what are our products, what are we offering, and we have to decide what to get rid of or where we still need access to and come up with a plan for that. As we transitioned out of commercial and out of non-standard and all the other things and went to package at the small agency I was at, we had to decide what to do with a lot of things. And it was like, over the next 12 months, we're going to offload all commercial in a very kind way where we have a relationship and they're going to be brokered over and we're going to call the client and explain the process and why we're not doing it. And it's not because we don't love them, but we had to have a clear path. And once that was done, we had to let the carriers know we no longer needed the appointment because we were no longer in the commercial game, right? But in the meantime, we
care for your client in that
Right.
way, right? Because you're doing what's best for them, and you're also protecting your agency from a lot of E&O too, because now you're doing what you're really great at.
Absolutely. Therese, do you want to talk a little bit about why an operational plan is important or why processes and procedures are important for the day-to-day operation?
Processes and procedures are huge. And I can relate this back to teaching because,
I'm giggling because I know how passionate Therese is about
oh my God.
the process.
I'll give you a huge example is my first couple of years of teaching, I would just kind of wing it. So I moved to Guatemala at 21. I was hired 3 days after I moved there to be a teacher. I went and it was a private school, but I went in and they handed me books for 5th grade and said, here you go, you're a teacher, no curriculum. So all they wanted was my English because I spoke English and I didn't speak Spanish. So it was great for the kids because I couldn't speak to them in their language. I had to speak English. So these 5th graders, I can guarantee you they speak English better now than they would have ever because they had me as a teacher. And I'm not bragging. I'm just saying I didn't speak Spanish. What I learned, and I was at that school for, I think, 3 years. And then I moved to the American School of Guatemala. And I learned in like 5th grade. So if you start off and you don't have all those processes and procedures ready to go when you first start teaching, those kids will walk all over you because you don't have those rules and regulations and what do we do here and what do we do there. So you have to have processes and procedures to basically have everybody following things the same way. So I ended up being the coordinator of 4 different sections of the same grade level. And that's a Spanish team and an English team. So I coordinated those teams and made sure everybody was on the same page. So the English teachers were all teaching all 4 sections the same thing, the same days. The English teachers were teaching the same thing the same days. So everybody was in alignment. So the kids could ask any one of those 4th grade, 5th grade teachers, they could ask them questions about the content, and the English teachers we were teaching 4: language arts, math, science, and social studies. And the Spanish teachers were teaching science and language and Spanish. You have to have those processes and procedures in place. Your staff have to follow them. So you look, and it makes you look so much more professional and so much more on point because everybody's doing it the same way. It's structured and it makes sense. So any kind of strategic planning and structure is huge. And in operations, you want it streamlined so everybody knows what's happening. So if a client calls in and they spoke to Steven yesterday, but Steven's out today because he won the lottery, I should be able to just pick right up on that client and move forward with it. And that's what processes and procedures and operations do for you and your agency. It just makes everything so much easier.
Yeah. And then you really do want to have that step by step, like, how are we going to execute this? How are we going to roll this out? What does that look like? You got to develop that timeline and develop a realistic timeline. A lot of times, when agency principals and leadership teams are visionaries, and, sometimes we're not real realistic in our timeline about how long it might take our staff to adopt to certain changes that we might be asking them to make. So really having a strong timeline and understanding about how we're going to roll these things out, how we're going to monitor them, how are we going to track them, what are the metrics? So we said before, facts, not feelings, right? So we have to, how are we going to operate with the facts? How are we going to pull the facts in? Is it going to be from our CRM? Is it going to be from our agency management system? Are you working some kind of side hustle spreadsheet? Where are the facts coming from? But we have to have the facts so that we can make decisions and we can track it and we can plan everybody's progress and help boost them when we're not meeting the metrics.
And I think, again, don't be afraid to ask for help. Raise your hand, reach out to us. We have resources available. We have the whole plan online available for purchase, or you can work with one of us and we'll help you through the whole plan and process. You could find another mentor, another agent, and do it together, for goodness sake, right? And then kind of hold each other accountable. But at the end of the day, we have to have a clear plan with a path to make it happen. And that starts now. We can't wait until January for a 2024 plan. And we need to get on it now to get it at least outlined and start getting the teams buy-in. So thank you for joining us, guys. We'll see you again on our next podcast. Until then, have a beautiful day.
Bye, everyone.